Welcome back to Time Out with the Sports Doctor podcast, where life, sports, and medicine intersect. We're very glad that you continue to support this podcast. You can get the information on any platform where podcasts are played, as well as getting the video content on YouTube. But if you want to just get one place to find all the content, go to my website at DrDerrick.com, and you will find everything on that website. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Time Out with the Sports Doctor. Very glad to have you back for another episode. Today it's just me. We're going to do a solo episode. We're going to do another book review. I've been getting or receiving really good feedback from you about these book reviews. And I have a book today that I feel is a transformational book. It was actually a book that Dr. Latifat recommended when she was on the show about a month or so ago. Also, her book, Done with Broke, I highly recommend that. But we're going to talk about this book because if you can grasp the concept and the philosophies about changing the way you approach problems, I think this can really change your mindset on how you approach things, because it did for me for sure. Last week's episode, I had my brother on and my cousin. We were talking about creating a legacy for the family. One of the main legacies is knowing that your family, from a spiritual standpoint, is safe, and and that their lives are secure there. And very glad to announce my son was baptized last week in front of a lot of family and friends. We had a great family reunion. Go back and check out that episode with my brother and my cousin, talking about how to create a family legacy. And very fortunate, we're 2 years and counting. I've seen so many podcasts never get launched. I've seen so many podcasts fizzle out over 2 years, but I'm very fortunate that this podcast continues to grow and continues to strengthen as we progress. So continue to stay tuned. I appreciate each and every one of you. I know we have new listeners because I've heard from several people about, hey, I didn't know you had a podcast. I've been listening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your feedback, because sometimes, just like with anything, you're like, is this needed still? Am I making a difference? Am I wasting my own time? But anytime I get that feedback, it's like refueling the car. We're not here to reach everyone. We're here to reach one person at least each time. And when someone can connect with the message being given, that's all that really matters. If we can reach the multitude, that's great. If not, each one reach one. So yeah, just thank you for that. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking today about a book that I read probably about a month or so ago. I'm actually on the sequel now, but Who Not How: The Formula to Achieve Bigger Goals Through Accelerating Teamwork by Dan Sullivan. So this book focuses on basically how you approach situations or problems and how do you solve them, because we've been taught through our formal education that it's not about we've been taught through our formal education that to ask how can we achieve a goal or how can we solve a problem. But this book goes a step further to say sometimes it's not how can you solve the problem, it's who can solve the problem, who can help you solve the problem. And I know there's several things with this podcast from the beginning. There's so many tasks that have to be done. You have to find a guest. You have to record an episode. You have to edit an episode. You have to upload an episode, promote an episode, and it can be tiring. And I did it by myself for almost a year. And then I found a who. And my who has been for the last year VA Podcast Philippines with Miss Neeling Matugas, who does an excellent job editing this podcast and helping me promote this podcast, which takes a heavy burden off my shoulders. So I know in a busy week, if I can just sit down and get the content recorded and shoot it out, it's taken care of after that. So there's still many things in my mind that takes up so much mental capacity about how can I do it? How can I write a book? How can I create a t-shirt? How can I, create promotional materials for this podcast? Just talking about this podcast alone. But that takes up a lot of mental space and it takes a lot of time. I could sit down and research for hours, or I could find a who. So I just want you to start to think about things in your life that a who would take so much time and burden off of you than trying to figure out all the time how. So they started off this book talking about Michael Jordan, as you know, arguably the best player in basketball history. You know, I grew up as a Michael Jordan fan, still a Michael Jordan fan, also a LeBron James fan. But that topic is a whole different discussion that we're not going down. But the whole point that he was making is that Michael Jordan, even in his peak, we know that he was an elite athlete. We know that he was at the top of the NBA, but he struggled to win a championship until Phil Jackson brought in his who, right? So his who was Scottie Pippen, great defender, great ball player, and made Michael Jordan even better having Scottie Pippen there as a sidekick. And as we all know, went on to win 6 national championships or 6 NBA championships during the 90s alone. Would he have won championships without Scottie Pippen? Undoubtedly so at some point. However, we do know what the magic that they were able to work together. So no matter how talented you are, you can always be better with another person to amplify your talents or to take some of the minor work, the 80-20 rule. The more people you can surround yourself with, the more you can operate in that zone of genius. And we know that with that zone of genius, you're going to be more productive. So, one interesting thing, I'm not going to touch on all the different topics because we could be here for hours, but I just want to give you some of the facts that I learned or some of the ideas that I took away from this book. Now, I definitely recommend that everyone read this book on your own. As you can see, the title at the bottom, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. It's available on audiobook as well, and that's how I consume this book. So, procrastination. Anytime we hear the word procrastination, I'll speak for myself. Anytime I hear the word procrastination, it has a negative connotation, and it automatically thinking about not getting things done, because procrastination can limit your imagination and a smaller self-image. However, procrastination, if you look at it from a different angle, is wisdom. It's your mind saying, hold on, there's something that I'm not really understanding about this. It's something that's not really processing. Before we just run into this, is there something else that we need to know? That's one way of thinking about it. So if you think about it from that standpoint, procrastination is a clue that you need to get another who involved. You need to get more information. You need someone who can bring their expertise to help you get through this problem. And I never really heard of procrastination spoken on from a positive standpoint, but that's just something to think about. So, limiting beliefs will make you focus on how instead of who. Your potential becomes limitless when you ask who, not how. And this goes along with the free your time and free your mind. I think one thing many professionals, especially in the medical field, we get so bogged down with just the daily task. And many times your creativity can just come to a halt almost. So if you can free time up, white space, as we talked about in the Getting Unbusy book, if you can free time where you can be creative, then I think the possibilities are limitless.
The Sabre training bat is like no other training bat you've ever used before. So the purpose of the Sabre training bat with its modified barrel is so that you can perfectly sequence and get behind the ball, getting the bat on plane sooner, creating less miss hits, more line drives, higher batting averages, and more exit velocity. The Sabre training bat is the #1 training bat on the market. Sabre Bats, the training bat that's going to take you to your best swing.
Escalation of commitment. Every time you invest in something, your commitment increases. So, what does this mean? To me, this means the more skin you have in the game, the more committed you are, the more likely you're going to see progress. And I think this goes along with so many free courses. There are free courses everywhere, but many times you'll either get the course and not complete it, or you kind of skim through the course but never really take it seriously because you don't have much skin in the game. But I think that's one thing with coaching that's so valuable, because many times people pay thousands of dollars for coaches, However, if you can have somebody that can really captivate your attention and really help you get through these things, I think that that's when you really start to see payoff. So, three factors that affect production: having clarity of vision, having autonomy, and also getting feedback on your results. So, the who must be given autonomy to get the results in whichever way they see fit, which is hard. This is hard for me because many times when you have a who, or you have a coworker, or you have a junior resident, or someone working with you, do you trust them enough to allow them to have the autonomy to do what they need to do? Because truly, once you can trust somebody and give them the autonomy to get it done, it might not be done exactly how you want to get it done. That allows you to be much more productive. So find your who, trust your who, allow your who to do what you need them to do without always having to micromanage them. So lessons are repeated until they're learned. And this was very interesting here. This quote by Dan Sullivan: if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. If you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. That's really good because many times we can afford to pay people to take care of some smaller task for us, and we might lose sleep over it day in and day out. But if you have enough money to pay someone to take care of that problem, whether it's something small task around the house, you have an electrical outlet that needs to be fixed, you can be on YouTube for days to try to figure it out and maybe even have to hire somebody in the end, cutting your lawn, cleaning your pool, whatever it may be. From a smaller task, I think he mentioned an example of someone who had a leak in their roof and did not want to get somebody else involved, climbed up on the roof, fell off, got injured. Which one was more costly, the injury or paying someone to actually take care of it for you? Now, let's talk about relationships. I think this is really good. So, two types of relationships: transactional relationships and transformational relationships. So, what are transactional relationships? So, transactional relationships is where you're always asking the question, what's in it for me? And transactional relationships, you're going to have some of those, but they usually work for the short term. Versus transformational relationships, you ask, what's in there for them instead of what's in it for me. So he spoke about being a hero for others. So seek to be a hero for your team and you will do the best work for them. Seek to be a hero for your team and you will do the best work for them. This can be at home for your family. This could be at work for your work family. This could be, for athletes while you're on a team, but seek to be a hero. Mentorship. We all know that once we make it to a place, it's much easier for us to help somebody else get there than it might have been for us to get there. So seek to be a hero for someone. Find a mentee. Help that coworker who's new on the job. Help that person that you see struggling. Help that person that's been alienized by everyone else who seems to be different. Help that person and be a hero for them. And then moonshots. This is something that Keon Howard often says: shoot for the moon, because if you miss the moon, you're still amongst the stars. So he mentioned moonshots are very lofty goals that can change the world if completed. So, what are some of the things that are required for moonshots? They should solve a problem for millions of people, must provide a radical solution that can end the problem for good. And technology actually has to have that capability of solving that problem. So, who's expand your vision and purpose? Who do you want to be a hero to? This allows you to decrease your competition. So, if you see someone in the similar work field or in the similar space, that's one thing with podcasts. Can you have too many podcasts? Can you have too many books? Oh, someone already covered this topic. I guess I won't do it. There's always your unique perspective that you can bring. And sometimes what they're mentioning here is that if you collaborate, the power of collaboration is something that I've spoken about multiple times on this podcast. If you're working together for trying to achieve a common goal, more than likely the probability of you doing it together is better and probably be able to do it with less effort required. So, who's are attracted to vision? So, one thing before you try to find your who, you really need to know what your vision is. What are you seeking to do? Who are you seeking to be? So, you must first define that before you find your who. So, have the courage to know that you can do more and you can be more than you are currently or that you have been in your past. And one way to do that is by finding the who, finding that community, finding that circle of friends, the circle of people who have common goals, common interests, who really want to see you do well. And from that, I think you will see growth. So, those are some of the takeaway points that were important to me from this book. I'm now doing I guess, the sequel to this book, which is 10X is Easier Than 2X, another very transformational book about utilizing these who's to help you reach higher gains, whether it's in your work, whether it's at home, whether it's in your training, utilizing other people to promote and enhance what you're doing. So give me feedback on this. Hopefully, you found this episode helpful for something that you're going through. Also, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Dr. Derrick, the Sports Doctor, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Also have a YouTube channel where we have this video content. So if you're just listening to it on audio, you're not getting the full effect. Join us on our YouTube page as well. We have a website at Dr. Derrick, the Sports Doctor. Go to the website. All the content's available, whether it's on audio or YouTube. You can also sign up to be a guest. You can send feedback. You can even leave a voicemail if you like, right there on the website. So I feel like the website is very important for everything we do. Sign up for the VIP mailing list where we send out a newsletter. We also pass along any promotions that come our way to allow you to take full advantage of everything that comes to the table. Because we are, as we mentioned here, collaborating to try to enhance what others are doing. I feel like that's very important. I feel that when you're a guest on my podcast, I want to promote you even more than I want to promote myself. So I feel that helps me give value to anybody that comes to the podcast. And that seems to work as far as attracting other people into my vision. So we're going to continue to do the same thing, continue to try to strengthen our mindset, help grow our assets, as well as help achieve whatever level of success. First, defining success, like they said here, you have to define the vision and then you can pursue it. So hopefully this episode helps you. Be blessed. Have a great week. Until later. Peace. Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later. Peace. Time out with the sports doctor. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust you don't want to miss. This is where life, sports, and medicine.